So, let's jump right into it. Number 8. Pithovirus sibericum. For 30,000 years, this virus did absolutely nothing. Then scientists thought it, and it immediately started infecting cells again. That discovery changed the way researchers think about frozen ground. In 2014, scientists studying Siberian permafrost recovered a giant virus from soil that had remained frozen since the Ice Age. The sample came from a world that existed long before cities, kingdoms, or written history. Yet when the virus was brought into laboratory conditions and introduced to living amoeba cells, it did not behave like something ancient or damaged. It behaved like a virus. The organism was named Pithovirus sibericum. It belongs to a strange category known as giant viruses, organisms so large that they challenge the traditional image of what a virus is supposed to look like. Some are large enough to be seen with ordinary light microscopes, and they carry far more genetic material than many scientists once thought possible for a virus. What made Pithovirus remarkable was not its size, it was its survival. For decades, many researchers assumed that viruses gradually lost their ability to infect as time passed. Genetic material breaks apart, biological structures degrade. Eventually, nothing remains except fragments. Pithovirus showed that under the right conditions, that assumption can be wrong. The frozen soil had preserved the virus so effectively that once it encountered a suitable host, it resumed its normal biological function. The reassuring part is that Pithovirus infects amoebas, not humans. The unsettling part is what the discovery proved. If one virus can remain infectious after 30,000 years beneath the Arctic, then the permafrost is not simply preserving bones and fossils. It is preserving biology, and most of what is preserved there has never been tested. Number 7. Mollivirus sibericum. One ancient virus waking from Siberian ice was frightening. A second one waking from the same frozen world made the warning much harder to dismiss. In 2015, just 1 year after the discovery of Pithovirus sibericum, researchers announced that they had revived another giant virus from Siberian permafrost. It was also around 30,000 years old. It was also still infectious. But it was not the same virus. It belonged to a different lineage, with a different structure, a different genetic makeup, and a different place in the strange world of giant viruses. They named it Mollivirus sibericum. That discovery mattered because it changed the story from an isolated miracle of preservation into something closer to a pattern. Pithovirus could have been dismissed as a biological accident, a rare survivor kept intact by perfect conditions. Mollivirus suggested something much larger. The frozen ground was not preserving one lucky virus. It was preserving whole communities of ancient viral life. Like Pithovirus, Mollivirus infected amoebas in laboratory conditions. It entered the cells, replicated, and killed them. The 30,000 years it had spent frozen did not make it harmless. It did not fade into a fossil. It waited until the temperature changed and then continued doing what viruses do. The unsettling part is not that this specific virus targets humans. It does not. The unsettling part is what it proves about permafrost. If two very different giant viruses can survive in ancient frozen soil, then the Arctic is not a sealed museum of dead organisms. It is a vault of suspended biology, and only a tiny fraction of that vault has ever been tested. Most permafrost samples have never been screened for viable viruses. Most ancient viral families have never been named. The ones scientists found first were not chosen because they were the most dangerous. They were found because researchers finally looked. Number 6. Anthrax. In the summer of 2016, an unusual heatwave struck the Yamal Peninsula in northern Russia. Temperatures rose far above normal, and the permafrost began thawing deeper than local herders had seen in decades. Somewhere beneath the tundra, the frozen remains of a reindeer that had died long ago became exposed again. That animal had carried anthrax. Within weeks, the disease was moving through the herds. More than 2,000 reindeer died. Dozens of Nenets herders were hospitalized. A 12-year-old boy died after the outbreak spread through the region. Russian authorities declared an emergency, sent in biological response teams, burned carcasses, and evacuated families by helicopter. This was not an ancient warning found in a laboratory sample. It was a real outbreak in the modern world, triggered by thawing ground. Anthrax is caused by Bacillus anthracis, a bacterium with one terrifying advantage. When conditions become harsh, it forms spores. These spores are built for waiting. They can survive drying, heat, cold, and time in ways most living things cannot. Frozen in permafrost, they can remain dangerous for decades, possibly much longer. That is what made Yamal so important. It proved that permafrost is not only preserving strange ancient organisms for scientists to study, it can preserve lethal pathogens in a form still capable of killing. The deeper problem is scale. Across Siberia, old burial sites hold livestock and reindeer that died during past anthrax outbreaks. Some are marked, many are not. As the Arctic warms, the ground that sealed them is losing strength. Each thawed carcass becomes a possible doorway. The disease did not evolve into something new. It did not escape from a laboratory. It simply waited in the frozen body of an animal until the climate changed enough to release it. Number 5. The 1918 flu. The pandemic in the ice. In 1918, influenza moved across the world with a speed and violence that stunned even doctors who had already lived through war. It infected hundreds of millions of people and killed tens of millions. In some remote Arctic communities, the losses were almost impossible to absorb. Entire villages were struck in days, and the dead were buried quickly in ground that remained frozen for decades. One of those places was Brevig Mission in Alaska. When the flu reached the village in 1918, most of its adult population died within days. Their bodies were placed in a mass grave in permafrost, sealed beneath the cold. For decades, the grave remained more than a burial site. It became a frozen archive of the virus that had caused one of the greatest human disasters in history. In the late 20th century, scientists returned to that grave and recovered lung tissue from one of the victims. The preservation was good enough to reveal the genetic material of the 1918 influenza strain. Later, researchers used that material to reconstruct the virus in high containment conditions, allowing them to study why it had been so deadly. That achievement helped science understand the pandemic, but it also revealed something unsettling. Frozen human remains can preserve the genetic traces of a pandemic virus for generations. Number 4. Smallpox. In 1980, the World Health Organization announced that smallpox had been wiped from the world. It was one of the greatest achievements in medical history. A disease that had killed hundreds of millions, scarred survivors, blinded victims, and shaped entire empires was finally gone from natural circulation. For the first time, humanity had defeated a plague completely, but the ground does not follow official announcements. In parts of Siberia, smallpox victims from past epidemics were buried in permafrost. The cold slowed decay, preserving bodies for centuries. When researchers examined some of these remains, they found traces of variola, the virus that causes smallpox. Not an active outbreak, not a revived virus, but enough genetic evidence to prove that the disease had not vanished from every place on Earth. Some of it had been stored underground. That is what makes smallpox so unsettling in this story. Above ground, it was erased. Below ground, the record of it remained. The danger is not only the virus itself, it is the world that would face it now. Routine smallpox vaccination ended decades ago in most countries. Many people alive today have never been vaccinated against it. Those who were vaccinated long ago may have weakened protection. A disease that once met populations with some memory of it could now encounter billions of bodies with no direct immune experience at all. Number 3. Ancient plague. The Black Death may have been one of the most famous pandemics in history, but it was not the beginning of the story. By the time plague swept across medieval Europe, the disease had already been infecting humans for thousands of years. That discovery only became clear when scientists started examining ancient DNA. For generations, plague was treated as a medieval disaster. The images were familiar: fleas, rats, crowded cities, mass graves, and the pandemic that devastated Europe in the 14th century. It seemed like a disease that belonged to castles, kingdoms, and the historical record. Then researchers began studying the teeth of Bronze Age skeletons. Hidden inside those ancient remains were traces of Yersinia pestis, the bacterium responsible for plague. Some of the samples were more than 5,000 years old. That meant humans were encountering plague long before the rise of classical civilizations, long before the Roman Empire, and long before anyone recorded its effects in writing. The discovery transformed the timeline of one of history's most feared diseases. Plague was not a medieval invention. It was an ancient companion that had been traveling with human populations since the earliest chapters of civilization itself. Number 2. Salt crystal bacteria. Scientists opened a crystal that had been sealed for roughly 250 million years and found something inside that was still alive. Not a fossil, not a chemical trace, not the remains of a long-extinct organism. Life. The crystal came from a deep salt formation in New Mexico, buried hundreds of meters underground since the Permian period. It formed before dinosaurs existed, before mammals appeared, and before the continents looked anything like they do today. Locked inside was a microscopic pocket of ancient saltwater that had remained isolated from the outside world for an almost unimaginable span of time. When researchers examined that tiny pocket, they discovered a bacterium. More remarkably, when it was placed in the right conditions, it began to grow again. That is the part that changes the way people think about survival. Entire species have appeared and vanished during the time this organism remained trapped inside stone. Dinosaurs dominated the planet and disappeared. Continents drifted apart. Oceans changed shape. Mass extinctions reshaped life itself. Through all of it, this microbe remained sealed away, waiting. The bacterium was not known to cause disease in humans. The significance lies elsewhere. It demonstrated that some microorganisms can survive for lengths of time that seem almost impossible. Given the right conditions, life can slow itself down, endure, and remain viable far beyond what most people would expect. That matters because many dangerous bacteria rely on similar survival strategies. Anthrax forms spores. Tetanus forms spores. Botulism forms spores. The ability to wait is one of the oldest tricks in the microbial world. Number 1. Siberian permafrost craters. The most dangerous plague reservoir on Earth may not be a laboratory, a jungle, or a hospital. It may be the frozen ground beneath Siberia, and that ground is beginning to split open. Across the Arctic, permafrost that stayed frozen for thousands of years is thawing at a speed modern science is still trying to measure. In Siberia, strange craters have appeared in the tundra. Some formed when trapped methane builds pressure beneath the frozen surface and explodes upward. In other places, the land collapses slowly, exposing layers of soil that have not seen sunlight since the Ice Age. Those layers are not empty. Permafrost preserves almost everything it seals: bones, plants, carcasses, bacteria, viruses, parasites, and the remains of animals that died carrying infections of their own. Some of that material is tens of thousands of years old. Some may be far older. The cold did not always destroy it. In many cases, it protected it. That is why the permafrost matters more than any single organism on this list. Pithovirus survived in it. Ancient worms survived in it. Anthrax returned from it. Frozen graves preserved traces of past pandemics. The permafrost is not one threat. It is the container that can hold many of them at once. The scale is difficult to picture. Siberian permafrost stretches across millions of square kilometers. Buried inside are old animal carcasses, forgotten burial grounds, microbial communities, and ancient organic matter that has remained locked away because the temperature stayed low enough to keep the seal intact. Now that seal is weakening. What makes this particularly unsettling is that no one knows the full inventory. Scientists have tested only a tiny fraction of what lies frozen beneath the Arctic. Most of it has never been sampled. Most of it has never been named. The next organism released may be harmless. It may be something science already understands. Or it may be something modern immune systems have never seen. Truly, most of these organisms were never truly destroyed. They were preserved. And for the first time in thousands of years, some of those seals are beginning to break.